So for the last 3 years of my professional career in policing, I was a deputy chief in the Salt Lake City Police Department, and I was tasked with implementing a crime reduction strategy. We had a substantial increase in crime beginning in 2020 and continuing through 2021 and 2022. Having been involved in the area of research as well as the literature on evidence-based strategies, I knew that there was a long-standing literature, at least spanning several decades, of what works when it comes to evidence-based strategies that police agencies can use to affect crime reduction. The issue then becomes, how can an agency implement those strategies in a systematic and sustainable way to where a large organization with several hundred police officers all working towards the same goals and hopefully positive outcomes. And as I talk about in the paper, there were several strategies identified for that systems-based approach. And what this paper was kind of a case study, if you will, of what my experience was implementing evidence-based strategies at a large police agency, and the lessons I learned as far as what worked and what didn't work. So there needs to be a top-level champion, if you will, championing this approach. Many times in my experience, not only at the police agency I worked for, but police agencies that I've worked with everywhere, people have a good idea, but there's not a whole lot of sustained thought into the process of how to implement that idea across the agency in a way that will continue and be sustainable, so you actually see these positive outcomes that should be coming from an evidence-based strategy. Without a high-level, executive-level commander being the champion for pushing this approach, it very quickly and easily becomes another good idea from the good idea fairy, and it goes away within 2 months, right? You have to have somebody driving, or steering the ship, if you will, continuously pushing forward in that approach so that you have a longitudinal view where you can stick with this process and finally see those outcomes at the end. By the time you get to an executive level position, you have many friends who are also in supervisory and leadership positions that you've grown up with at the police department. Obviously, in a hierarchical structure, friendships can be difficult to deal with at times if you're trying to give them direction to do something that they either don't think they can do or don't want to do, and how do you manage that, right? Oftentimes, a lot of these evidence-based, I don't want to say oftentimes, in my experience, there are particular pieces of our strategy that some people who I was friends with for a long time and had certain responsibilities in it, like, this isn't possible, like, this can't be done, right? And you really have to be willing to push back, even with friends, like, this is possible. Let's talk about what you've done, and if there's a gap between what you think needs to be done to get to this place and what the literature on this strategy says, well, let's bring those two things closer together. But I expect you to do these things. Yeah. Right? This is the direction we're going. And you have to have those difficult conversations in leadership positions. Luckily, I had people in my structure that were willing to have those conversations with me, even when those conflicts arose. And you have to be able to push past that this isn't possible and get them to actually engage in those steps. And I give the example in the paper of, there was a specific strategy that a lieutenant was responsible for that they said this isn't possible. So we sit down and have that conversation. There was a gap between what they believed needed to be done to be able to get there versus what I envisioned needing to be done to get there, and also made sure that they understood, like, you are empowered to use all of these resources to make this happen. And really pushed for that to get done. And then, lo and behold, we do those things, and it is possible, right? And then that just kind of, like, once you can get over that initial hurdle, that initial hill, like, it just starts to snowball, right? Everybody sees the successes, and there was continued successes, and everybody just got really, really good at what these strategies encompass. There are many lessons that can be learned in processes outside of crime reduction and a whole host of different things when it comes to a police department or any organization, really. It takes a little bit of humility in recognizing how much an organization, including leadership in it, can handle at one time. One of the mistakes that we identified is we were trying to implement two really large strategies at once, and it was just too much. It caused a lot of confusion. Now, both of those strategies were very, very useful, and I believe contributed to the drastic reductions in crime that we had. But it really did cause a lot of confusion, and I think the process would have gone a little bit better and probably would have gotten buy-in a little bit sooner if we were able to avoid that confusion by focusing on a strategy at a time rather than trying to manage two large strategies at the same time.